This is a podcast by the News Minute, and you are listening to South Central.
Hello and welcome to South Central, a T&M podcast where we put South at the center. I am Dhanya Rajendran, your host. Joining me in the Bengaluru studio is Pooja Prasanna, our reporting head and the anchor of Let Me Explain.
Hello, Dhanya. You've run away from Bangalore again.
Just for 2 days, Pooja. And sitting next to Pooja is Leena Reghunath. Leena, co-host of the show, who is an investigative journalist who's worked with organizations like the Caravan. Welcome, Leena.
Hi, Dhanya.
So this week we're going to be dealing with only one topic because it is a precarious situation that we are in now. So after the headlines, we'll jump straight into the India-Pakistan situation. Will it escalate or de-escalate? We'll have two guests joining us. One is Nitin Pai. He's the co-founder and director of the Takshashila Foundation. Takshashila is an independent center for research and education. His current research includes geopolitics of Indo-Pacific, defense economy, and the politics of radically networked societies. The second guest who will join us is Smita Sharma. She's a senior journalist who's been covering foreign policy for many years. She reports for multiple news channels, international and national. She also writes for many newspapers. Her reportage on the Kashmir conflict in 2010 had won her the Ramnath Goenka Award. So both these guests will also join. Before we go to the headlines, just a reminder that the Press Freedom Week offer is still running. You take one subscription and you will get one subscription absolutely for free. So the QR code is here. The link is in the description. We are going to be sending colleagues to Kashmir to report. So, and it is very important now that the media reports the truth, the facts, and the media tells you what is the human cost of this entire crisis, which is why we would be sending reporters to Kashmir. So we hope that you will support our journalism by taking the subscription, because we keep telling you that we are not sponsored by any political party or corporations. So click on the QR code or on the link which is in the description. Pooja will go to the headlines.
Yeah. Also, just a quick reminder, remember, this is a developing situation. These are the headlines as of today. I'm sure by the time we put this out, there will be a lot more that has happened. But at least 100 terrorists killed in Indian strikes in Pakistan and POK, that's the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. This is what Rajnath Singh has said at an all-party meeting. Remember, this was a closed-door meeting. Rajnath Singh is learned to have told the all-party meeting that these are just their initial assessments, and leaders from across party lines have pledged their support to the government. And he also gave some details about Operation Sindoor, is what we hear. Dhanya, we did reach out to a few, this is just a few minutes ago, it's concluded. We did speak to a few leaders who were part of that meeting. What are you hearing?
Yeah, so we spoke to a few of the MPs who were part of that meeting and to people associated with them. Now, one thing is that the government did not want to divulge too many details, and the government insisted, which is Rajnath Singh insisted, that that is the best for national security. And I don't think the parties insisted on not knowing all the details. So what he said is that 100 have been killed, and this includes some hardcore, high-value target terrorists, is what he told the meeting. He also talked about how they will not escalate the situation and that India has reached its intended purpose. That's what Rajnath Singh said. So Mallikarjun Kharge, the Congress president, we are told, asked the meeting that there have been reports, especially by CNN, which reported quoting a French officer, that one of India's Rafale jets was shot down by Pakistan, and that in total India has lost 5 jets on May 7th, May 6th, May 7th nights. So to that, the government did not respond. Other allies or other opposition parties also asked specifically about these foreign jets. There was no reply from the government. Rahul Gandhi was unhappy that Prime Minister Modi has not come for the all-party meeting. It had Rajnath Singh, I think it had Amit Shah, but it did not have Narendra Modi. And he said that this will look negative on India, because all of us have supported what the government did, and the Prime Minister is not even bothered to come to the all-party meeting. But Rajnath Singh has also told the all-party meeting that they will come back with more details as it is an evolving situation.
Right. Pakistan's air defense system in Lahore neutralized. This is what the Ministry of Defense release has said. It said that the Indian armed forces on morning of Thursday, that's May 8th, targeted air defense radars and systems at a number of locations in Pakistan. And Indian response has been in the same domain with same intensity as Pakistan. It has been reliably learned that an air defense system at Lahore has been neutralized. This is what the press release said. This is very, very crucial because so far we'd seen only launch pads and terror camps being struck. This is a very strong message of intent, and Lahore, which is just across the border but deep within Pakistan in that sense, it's not POK. This is a very stern message. I wonder how Pakistan reads this.
So this is a press release which was put out by the Ministry of Defense at 2:34 p.m. Basically, it said that India had called for a focused, measured and non-escalatory response. And that India had specifically mentioned that Pakistani military establishments had not been targeted and only terror establishments were targeted. So what India said in this press statement is that Pakistan attempted to engage a number of military targets in northern and western India, including Avantipura, Srinagar, Jammu, Pathankot, Amritsar, Jalandhar, Ludhiana, Bhatinda, Chandigarh, and they were all neutralized by the integrated counter UAS grid and air defense system. So basically what India is saying is that on the night of May 7th, on the intervening night of May 7th and 8th, Pakistan has tried to hit a number of military targets in India, but India has countered these attacks. Which is when India also went for a counter attack, and in the morning, which is on May 8th morning, they have attacked air defense radars and systems at various locations in Pakistan. And India says that an air defense system in Lahore has been neutralized. And it also says that there has been unprovoked firing across the line of control using mortars and heavy caliber artillery, and 16 people have lost their lives. So that's the sum total of India's press release. But so I think if anyone thought that the situation will stop with India's attack on Pakistani terrorist camps, definitely not, because Pakistan has now gone ahead and attacked India's military targets, though of course they have not been successful in that. There are debris of plane which are being discovered in places like Punjab. So let's see how this evolves.
Just a small note on the shellings in Jammu and Kashmir. There isn't enough focus being given. I don't see it being as widely reported as we hope it would. So I do hope that people there also get some sort of voice and some relief and are moved out of there immediately. Next headline: Mukesh Ambani's Reliance Industries and others seek trademark registration of the title Operation Sindoor. This is a theatre in absurdity. Registration as word type trademark, and it has been sought for goods and services under class 41, and it covers education and entertainment services. Apart from them, the other individuals who applied are Mukesh Chetram Agarwal, Group Captain Kamal Singh Obe, and Delhi-based lawyer Alok Kothari. My God.
Yeah, so 4 people actually applied for this trademark. And look at the timing, Pooja. It is between 10:42 a.m. and 6:27 p.m., which is, we are all just digesting this Operation Sindoor. That press meet happened at 10:30, right? 10:30 was when the press meet started. 10:42, they've gone ahead and gone to apply for this. But there's also one more news update. Reliance has now put out a press statement saying that they are they're giving back the copyright. That they're sort of hinting that some over-enthusiastic employee has gone and taken it. The Reliance stands with the country, and therefore they're going to give back the copyright. But good. Reliance doing it, and that's only because of the outrage. People have been mocking them outright, saying, how do you do this?
Yeah, benefiting of a tragedy like this. On a slight, whatever note, I wonder when it is made, the movie, will it be Akshay Kumar? Will it be Kangana Ranaut? Just as bad as each other, but I'm just putting it out there.
So I think the one thing that Indians quite don't lose, even during times of war, is a sense of humor. I saw a tweet yesterday which said that the good thing about Operation Sindoor is that Akshay Kumar cannot act in it, but the worst thing is that Kangana Ranaut will make a movie out of it. So, yeah.
But don't rule him out just yet, huh?
Yeah, we're not ruling him out. Yeah. Of course not, no.
Our last headline for the day: tension along border. Schools, Anganwadi centers shut in 5 border districts in Punjab. And Punjab has a 553-kilometer border with Pakistan. And all of this, of course, is a precautionary measure. But Leena, you have reported from some of those places. It must be very scary for people there.
It must be, and we are seeing reports of civilian deaths, and it's not possible to evacuate people from along the full border that India shares with Pakistan. But I guess it's sad that we are losing our own civilians who are there, and there is no way to evacuate them out.
Okay, so that's it with the headlines, and we'll go directly into the topic of the day. Our guests are with us, Nitin Pai and Smita Sharma. Thank you, Nitin, and thank you, Smita, for joining us on South Central. As I've already told our audience, it's going to be a shorter episode with just one topic that we're discussing today. So we are actually recording at 3:45 on the 8th of May. Just an hour before, there was a press release in which India has said that there has been escalation from Pakistan's side, and India has responded to it. And that press release ends, Nitin, by saying that Indian armed forces reiterate their commitment to non-escalation, provided it is respected by the Pakistan military. So things have been changing a lot. How do you look at the situation now?
See, regardless of where this escalation, whether it happens or not from the Pakistani side, I think the most important thing is that there is a new normal which has been created, right? If you take 3 points, Uri, Balakot and Sindoor, it's a straight line. You need 3 points to create a straight line. And that straight line is a new normal which says that India will respond with military force to a terrorist attack above a certain threshold, right? And if there is escalation, so be it, because the prospect of an escalation is calculated, right? It's implicit in the fact before you fire your first shot, you calculate the fact that there will be an escalation. And I think the political calculation is that if and when that escalation happens, it will impact Pakistan far more than it impacts India. Right, so that's where the calculation is. Now we could think that the escalation might happen today or tomorrow or in some other form, but I think this has been already wargamed and calculated.
Smita, if you look at the targets, India has explained very clearly in its press meet what the 9 locations were. Why were these locations very important for India? Wait, if you can explain.
Well, hi everyone, and clearly when we saw that press briefing, it was very interesting, the optics of it, if you look at it. Of course, the name Operation Sindoor, very evocative as far as, the core Hindutva, not just the constituents, but also largely, of course, people have been affected by part of terrorism, and then Wing Commander Vyomika Singh and Colonel Sophia Qureshi there, showing those maps of the target areas. What was interesting was that India so far has been saying that we have targeted 9 terror sites. And if you look at those maps, there are actually 21 sites that were described and pointed to. So do your maths of what could come next. But, these targets, if you look at, I think what Nitin was talking about in terms of this being the new norms, these strikes are definitely very different from what we have seen post the Uri terror strikes, the surgical strikes that happened, or what played out in Balakot in the airstrikes after Pulwama, where 40 Indian Jawans were killed. The areas that were all chosen, they are basically essentially the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Punjab. And I'll just give some of the details of these names if you give me a couple of minutes. Say, for instance, Savai Nala that we talk about. Now, this is in Muzaffarabad, which is in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. This is opposite to Tangdhar on the Indian side. And this was considered to be a Lashkar camp. Most of these areas that have been targeted, these happen to be either the training camps or the camps which were used to launch terrorists into Indian territory. So which we call as the launch pads, which are actually not active 24/7, unlike the terror training camps, but which sort of become activated just ahead of these ops. Savai Nala. Then you have the Saidana Bilal camp. This is known to be a Jaish-e-Mohammed training camp, where there were stockpiles of ammunition. They were essentially gun training people. Kotli is close to the Rajouri sector. Again, this is considered to be the Lashkar camp. Kotli, Gulpur is close to the Rajouri Poonch sector in India. These are all within a few kilometers, if you look at from the international border, from the IB sector. And remember, in the last 1 year, we have seen a lot of terror attacks happen targeting the Indian army, the Indian soldiers across these sectors. So you were actually seeing the constant attacks on the men in uniform on our side, and those questions were being raised as to why were these sectors, which earlier used to be considered relatively peaceful sectors, compared to the valley, compared to the line of control, which would always remain hot, why were things heating up there? So a lot of these camps that have been targeted in these strikes are actually also responsible for some of the attacks that have taken place over the last few months over on the Indian army soldiers. The most important terror site that was listed there, which has been targeted and has a large significance, if you look at, that's Markaz Subhan Allah. Now, this is in Bahawalpur. And why does it become more important? Because Bahawalpur, this is in southern Punjab. This is almost 100 kilometers, from the Indian side. And we have to remember that we are all talking about the standoff weapons here. So, which means India firing either bombs, missiles while staying on its side, and not crossing into, of course, Pakistani territory, because then that would, under international norms, be considered as breach of territorial integrity. Now, Markaz Subhanallah was a breeding ground for terrorists, Jaish-e-Mohammed, and I think for India, in a way, it's a big boost that you had the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief, Maulana Masood Azhar, actually put out a statement yesterday where he confirmed these strikes, and he said that at least 10 members of his family were killed in these attacks, 4 of his aides were killed. Southern Punjab has always been the hotbed of terror groups. It's also been the hotbed for, the groups that have been involved in sectarian violence within Pakistan, including groups like Lashkar-e-Jhanvi. It's also where the Pakistani army draws its strength from. Pakistani army cantonments are there, whether it's in Muzaffarabad, whether it's, of course, you're talking about Bahawalpur area. And this is the area from where India believes, and India said that Pulwama attacks were actually planned from. So there's an army cantonment here too. Again, the remaining sites also, if you look at Saral, there was a Terakala village. Now here, because Pakistan has been saying that civilians have been targeted, there are women and children who have been killed by Indian attacks, there was a primary health center, which India believes was actually being used as a cover-up, as a cover front for the Jaish-e-Mohammed. So, they were just trying to use it as a shield, as a primary health center here. Mehmoona Joya, if you look at the Sialkot area, this is again another launch pad for the Hizbul Mujahideen. This is also an area where the ISI operates out of. There are government buildings out here. So, India has chosen its targets essentially along the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir belt, and these range from a distance of 30 kilometers to 100 kilometers. So the kind of weaponry that India has right now to allow for standoff attacks from its own territory, that allows it to go all the way up to 150 to 175 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. Happy to be corrected by Nitin if that's wrong. But I think the fact that India hit a target inside the heart of Punjab, something like Bahawalpur, which is being so nurtured by the militants, by the Pakistan military, by the Pakistan ISI, I think that sets a very new norm when it comes to, a response to cross-border terrorism from India.
Nitin, you want to add to that? But I have something to ask. For example, first, India said that we are targeting only the terrorist camps in Pakistan. Today, India's press release say that Pakistan has been trying to attack military targets in India. So, a worry for any normal person is that how much will this escalate? First, you start with terrorist locations, then you start with military targets. Would it go to civilian? For example, I just read out what CNN has reported in one of its stories. It quotes a Pakistani security source saying 125 jets fought for over an hour, staying in their own airspaces and firing missiles from afar. So this is a worry, right? How much will the escalation be?
I think, first of all, one of the things, maybe 2 points, right? One is, I think one of the things we must understand is that this tit for tat is very strong in Pakistani psyche, all the way from them, Pakistan seeing themselves as an equal of India. And their behavior always has had an element of tit for tat, right? So if you remember in the 80s and the 90s, they'll if one person at the Indian embassy is attacked, in the Pakistani embassy is arrested, then the Indian embassy, the same ranking guy will be arrested in the Indian embassy in Pakistan and so on. So responding on a tit for tat basis is quite almost like part of their strategic culture with respect to India, right? So when India does this and attacks 9 sites which are connected to terrorists in Pakistan, the question for the Pakistani side is, who do you attack? There are no terrorists in India. There's no equivalent of a militant group in India which is connected to the Indian Army or Indian Armed Forces. So, per force, if they have to respond, they will have to attack Indian Army or security force installations, right? It could be small units. It could be, it won't be something big. It could be some, relatively unimportant kind of units or facilities, but it will belong to uniformed members of the Indian Armed Forces. Now, the problem with that is escalation. Because what we've done is when I say the Indian Armed Forces have attacked militant organizations, which the Pakistani army says is nothing to do with us, right? They're not uniformed people, they're nothing. But when they respond, they'll attack Indian Armed Forces, which is an escalation, and then you'll be forced to respond. I think that's what has happened in the last 24 hours, where The Pakistani response has been shelling. And I think if you read the Indian press release, it seems that they have attacked several military installations in Indian cities, which was their form of responding. But now the response is on an Indian military installation, and therefore it requires a response back onto the Pakistani military. So the latest press release says that air defense units or air defense installations have been taken out in many parts of Pakistan, including in Lahore, which is in that sense an escalation, right? Although we call it non-escalatory, it is an escalation in basic terms of violence. My sense is that it is at this point where I think the Pakistanis should be finding a way to stop escalating this, because there's only so much they can go militarily, where they can say, look, we are peers, we are neck to neck, we can claim victory, both of us won, we didn't lose, and so on, right? But once that conflict goes into a longer span, either in time or in space or in intensity, that's when the balance of power starts beginning to make a difference, right? I mean, there's only so much you will have, there's only so much resources that you have, there's only so much you can sort of endure in a conflict. So my sense is if wisdom prevails, this is the point at which maybe this or little bit of here and there, after which they will sort of pipe down, 1 or 2 days after this. I could be horribly wrong. I don't want to be horribly wrong, but I could be horribly wrong.
As situation gets escalated, I think international community is going to get more worried about what is going to happen with these two nuclear power states, in full-blown war. We have just heard this today, US President talk about de-escalating, and he said, it's so terrible, my position is that I get along with both. I know both very well. I want to see them work it out, and I want to see them stop. So do you think that there will be some strong stepping in by the international community, whether it's US or anybody else?
I think we are past that phase. That phase was a point where there was an international community, international organizations would work. There would be some semblance of a rules-based behavior by great powers. We are not in that world anymore, right? We are in a world where relative power matters. You can do whatever you want to the extent that you have the power to do so and get away with it, right? So it is not surprising, therefore, that you just hear some diplomatic statements being made by various people, including the United States, but not much in terms of trying to get either side to pipe down or whatever, right? You will have closely associated capitals like Beijing, Saudi Arabia, and to some extent Washington having an interest in this. But I don't think it would be the same kind of, oh my God, nuclear weapons and all of that, which used to see in 20 years ago, people jumping around, it's headlines on CNN, BBC, etc. For several reasons. One is there are far more serious wars and violence going on around the world. And this is relatively small. It's important to us, but it's relatively small. And the second is, I think, people know that India is not going to listen, right? It's not that you can put pressure on India and say, hey, look, if you don't do this, we'll impose sanctions or we'll impose travel advisories or whatever. I think the New Delhi response today would be, do whatever you like. We are going to do what we like, right? So diplomacy is the art of asking what the other person will give and not asking what the other person will not give. So they're not going to do this. But I just want to stress that fact, right? This whole nuclear thing has been played up by the Pakistani generals for so long. And this is their game. Pakistan's nuclear weapons are directed against the West. They just want to scare the West into saying that, if India does something to us, things will go boom. So please, ask India to pipe down. So, you use your nuclear weapons to cover your terrorism and you cover your proxy war and all of that, and scaring the West especially. I think that game and that phase is over, right? And that's what I mean by saying this is a new normal, where it is unlikely that anybody in the international community will sort of put the kind of pressure which we were used to seeing 20 years ago, 15 years ago. They won't do that. And even if they do, I don't think there's any mood anywhere in New Delhi for anyone to listen, right? Now, it's different on Pakistan. because Pakistan today depends on the largest of the international community, and its record of good behavior is extremely important for it to get, say, for example, a loan from the IMF, or even to be bailed out by its traditional sponsors. Even the Chinese are not going to bail out Pakistan if it's not listening to them. Right? So I think Pakistan is a lot more vulnerable to international pressure at this time, which is also the reason why I thought, which I said that, escalation is something which they would do very, very carefully. It's not something they want to do right up front because it doesn't work for them.
But that said, Nitin, what is good behavior is also changing. It's evolving rapidly, right? I mean, look at US. They stood by Israel despite everything that it did, and it continues to do. So what we call good behavior is also based on one country's convenience. They just look at who they're hitting. It doesn't matter what they're violating. But that said, for me, what is also of concern is, this Pakistan's need to equate itself with India, right? It's so existential. And for the longest time, as two countries, I doubt we can say we're anywhere close to equal, economically, politically, or otherwise. But militarily is what it has put all its effort into to come close to India, where there is at least some sort of comparison, perhaps, at when first strike happens, if not in a longish war. And in Pakistan's both political and military doctrine, the fact that they have this need to respond, especially when it comes to India, do you think this will kind of trigger an all-out war? Because it is a country on the brink of collapse, and they need to show to the world and to its own people that we're not. And one way of doing that is striking at India the way it can. Is that a worry?
Smita, you want to take that? I just want to add one more thing. When Nitin will come back to you also on the same thing. Nitin was talking about New Delhi not being in a mood for talks, right? But suddenly we have seen Saudi Arabia, Iran, foreign ministers landing up in Delhi. So answer Pooja's question and then just take this also.
As far as the Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi is concerned, this was actually a pre-scheduled visit for the 28th India-Iran Joint Commission meeting. But they did make a very clear offer of mediation. So we saw him go to Islamabad on Monday, and just to try and show that this was not a hyphenated visit, he also went back to Tehran and then comes back again here. The Saudi Deputy Foreign Minister is in town. But Dr. Jaishankar, in his opening remarks, he made it very clear, and I'm quoting from his remarks, he said that if there are military attacks on us, there should be no doubt that it will be met with a very, very firm response. As a neighbor and close partner, it is important that you have a good understanding of the situation. So I would agree with Nitin here that while there are countries that are asking India and Pakistan to dial down tensions, to de-escalate, India is going to decide based on its own interests and what is at stake here, not because some other country is asking you to do so. And the United Nations Secretary General, with his heart in his right place, has been able to do nada when it comes to what's been going on between Israel and Palestine, or what's happened in Russia and Ukraine. The only formulation that is there for a so-called rules-based order today is honestly in Hindi that we say, jiski lathi uska bhains. Whoever owns the stick owns the buffalo. So if you have the might, you do what you think is right. It doesn't matter if it is whether right according to preset international norms or not. Having said that, there are a couple of things that I wanted to just flag here also in addition to the previous points that have been made. Of course, there will always be a chance of escalation in these kind of situations that remain fluid. Nobody can rule that out completely. These are two countries that have been, into war mode in the past, that have been at the brink of war on many occasions. But if you look at the past patterns, even when the Indian Parliament was attacked and the Indian Army was on the borders under Operation Parakram for many months at a stretch, of course, that decision is criticized on hindsight today, but it was the Vajpayee government. You didn't see a full-fledged war. Kargil, also remember, it didn't start off as a military invasion. It started off as infiltration from Pakistan. It started off as terrorists who were then, of course, identified on the Indian side and, by the locals. And then it was a limited war that happened. I do not see a full-blown war happening here at this point in time. The nuclear threat, I would agree that it is overplayed within these two countries. Nobody's going to push the nuclear button. For me, the bigger worry here is, and where the chances of escalation actually stand is, it's General Asim Munir, the Pakistani army chief. He's extremely rabid I mean, Pakistan has always lived under the shadow of its dictators, of its armed forces, of the establishment in ISI. But with Munir, the problem is, look, he has a very problematic internal situation in hand right now, which has completely raised questions about about the very credibility of the Pakistan army that is just so sacrosanct for the country. Whether it's the situation in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where you have the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan jihadists coming in large numbers and challenging their authority, or whether it's the situation in Balochistan, where Pakistan has been for years pointing fingers to India, saying that it's actually raw that has been fomenting trouble there. But this is, of course, an allegation that has never found serious standing as far as the international organizations are concerned. Contrary to India presenting documented evidences, whether it's against the Lashkar-e-Taiba, whether it's Jaish-e-Mohammed, these are all organizations that are proscribed as global terrorist organizations by the United Nations Security Council through various executive orders, and these all happen in the aftermath of terror attacks in the past. For me, the escalation problem lies in the fact that Pakistan would like to up the ante, because at this point in time, remember, there are no American soldiers in Afghanistan, unlike in the past. NATO is not there. That situation has changed. Pakistan, in a way, has been seeking American attention, that too at a point when Donald Trump has absolutely turned world politics, it's doing a headstand. Donald Trump is busy forming up trade deals. He really doesn't care two hoots about Pakistan. At this point, unless Pakistan offers to buy a lot of defense equipment from America, I mean, they won't even have the money to buy. They will have to borrow money from the Americans to buy American defense imports, really. So they have been crying for attention. They need that attention. Donald Trump, remember, in his last presidency, actually had cut off financial sanctions, that financial aid that was going into Pakistan. So for them, the point is, why have they been talking today for the DG-ISPR, the Pakistan Army spokesperson, to do a press conference and admit that Indians managed to injure 4 Pakistani soldiers in Lahore and killed a civilian through the drone attacks that were happening this morning, which is hours after that main strike under Operation Sindoor that happened. It's because they're wanting to present a case to the world that, look, we so far are only acting in defense. We still have a right to retaliation, and we want to retaliate, which could be a military retaliation, because, as Nitin pointed out, what are the targets that you choose to retaliate? And which is why they've increased so much of shelling in Poonch. You have from the Indian side today at least 16 deaths, 16 killings, which include 13 civilians, and I think 3 are from the armed forces, more than 49 people injured. And my heart goes out to those local Kashmiris. There, I do think a question needs to be asked of the local administration that following the Pahalgam terror attacks and in the last fortnight, why were evacuations already not done? Why were people not moved out? Why were villages not emptied when you knew that things were going to change for the worse, keeping in mind the onslaught of diplomatic offensives that India had already announced, including putting that Indus Water Treaty in abeyance?
I have a question. So we've seen what these strikes from India's side has politically achieved. It has also shown the intent of the Indian side that we will strike. Now, what I want to know is strategically and militarily, what has it achieved apart from showing our might that, staying this side of the border, we don't need to put boots on the ground. We can still hit targets, not just in POK, but in the outskirts of Islamabad. I hear that, houses could kind of hear the impact, Lahore, deep within Punjab. These are areas that India has breached. So what does that mean? What is the message and what has the achievement been?
No, strategically, I think it's the important messaging of deterrence. It is the messaging of deterrence that, look, we are willing to relook and revisit the past paradigms and shift from there. That it's not going to be the same old rules that will keep applying. So if you hate us, you have to think twice about what could be the repercussions and the consequences. I think there is that messaging for sure.
Yeah, see, analytically, the word deterrence, I think we should be careful, because we've never had deterrence with Pakistan with respect to terrorism. I mean, if you had terrorism, they wouldn't have done it at all, right? So there's no deterrence. So I can understand I'm just being pedantic and analytical here. It's not deterrence as much as it is severe discouragement, right? So what you do is, that as long as the Pakistani military jihadi complex is around, they're going to use terrorism against you, right? They're going to use it one day or the other for one reason or the other. what you do is you raise the costs and the consequences, make them aware of the consequences, such that they think very, very, very hard and long before they authorize the use of terrorism, right? Which means that instead of having terrorist attacks every other day, you might have it once in 2 or 3 years. And instead of having it on a very, very big scale, you'll probably have it in a smaller scale. So you put that sense into it. So, it's a very, it's not like a miracle bullet that it's going to solve your terrorism problem once and for all, right? It's just that you're buying time and you're creating enough fear of consequences in the minds of a variety of people in Pakistan that they say that, take it easy, let's not go and do what we did in the 90s and the 2000s because it's a different place and we're going to be hurt in ways that we don't want to be hurt. Now, in spite of doing this, right, you will not be able to deter these guys because the cost, the only thing you can do is prohibitive cost, right? Prohibitive cost is very hard to impose when there is a nuclearized situation, right? So, therefore, this sort of gives, I think sometimes the Western analytical prism can't understand us, in the Indian subcontinent because we are able to play within this band of gray, we don't have full deterrence, but at the same time, we won't have full permissivity. You'll be in a band of gray where, in the Kannada thing is that swalpa adjust madi kind of thing, right? You're just, you're pushing a little bit so that you get a little bit more. You're pushing a little bit so you get a bit more. It's not like a brilliant solution that ek baar button daba diya and the whole world changes. You're not there yet, and that's why I think it's important to remember this business of trying to deter Pakistan is a 24/7, hour by hour, week by week, month by month, year by year project, right? You have to do it at various levels all the time. There's not one single time that you could say that, okay, we are done now, they're discouraged, they're dissuaded, they're deterred, and now we can get on to other things, So you have to do various things at various times, including at certain times having to talk to them on track 2 and track 1 or whatever, right? It's not always shooting at each other. There are other points when you have to talk to them also.
I just want to add here, and I agree with Nitin. Look, by no stretch of imagination can anybody expect that Pakistan state, and by state I mean, of course, its government, its establishment, is going to change its behavior because of these strikes. No, they're not. So it's not a deterrence in the sense that Pakistan tomorrow will come into class acting like a very good, obedient boy. They're still going to be the absolute notorious, the constant problematic student in class. But the point is that for India, I think the cost that Nitin is talking about, for instance, today morning when Pakistan itself admitted that its air defense system had been neutralized because of the Indian drones, that's quite something. That talks about India's own building capability and capacity of what India could be capable of doing next. Also for India to send out this message, because globally we have always faced this problem. It's only the 9/11 terror attacks that in a way forced Americans to think of terrorism in a way that the global south, or India in particular, had been talking about for decades before that. They always had different prisms for looking at cases of terrorism. So for India to send out that message that, look, you can come and preach me, but at the end of the day, this is my problem. Pakistan, I think one of you asked that, Pakistan wants to be seen with India on the same platform. India doesn't want that. India has progressed a lot more. India's competition is China. Interestingly, for China, the competition is US. China doesn't think of India as an equal competitor. China thinks of India as a power in South Asia. So there are all these dynamics at play, but somewhere, it has to be a mixed bag. And which is the reason why you still don't have a complete severance of diplomatic ties. The Pakistan High Commission at the end of the day in New Delhi is still functional. The staff has been reduced from 55 to 30. There are no high commissioners on both sides. But you are separated by borders. Lahore to Amritsar, that distance is less than 50 kilometers. When you are so close to each other, you have to have channels of communication open at all stages. Whether it's at a track 1 level, 1.5 or a track 2 level, something or the other, at some point in time, it will have to be a mix of your stick policy, your carrot policy, and some just basic functionality.
The one thing is that after this attack has happened, we have seen all the political parties in the country saying that, yes, we support what has happened. I think it's only the CPI-ML which has said that war is not the way forward. And today, of course, in the all-party meeting, the CPIM made very clear that there cannot be any sort of escalation.
Raj Thackeray also said that.
no, there are lots of critiques of war, right? Now we are talking about how India is responding, how Pakistan will respond. But if things do escalate, that question will eventually be asked, Nitin, that should India not have chosen this path? That should war have been the path that we are choosing?
See, it's again compared to what? This is the thing, right? All of us are peace-loving people. As I said, I'm a peace-loving guy. But compared to what? If you have an act of terrorism and you do nothing, is it more likely or less likely that the next attack will come? Right? So we are not in the world where, just by being nice, everybody will automatically start being nice, right? So the response is something which you impose on the other guy, knowing that it is going to be expensive to you. In game theoretical terms, a response is credible only when it's expensive to you. You should incur pain. So when we go into war, we know that it extracts economic cost, right? Even if there are not lives lost on our side, there is an economic cost. But you're willing to take that economic cost to punish the other guy. That's why it's credible, right? So yes, there is a time for critiques of war. Yes, there is a time for trying to be liberal-minded enough to say that we are all the brotherhood of man and brotherhood of human beings and so on. But this is not that time, right? This is not that time. You don't try to critique war or critique nationalism or the nation state, etc. These are all philosophical debates. But this is not the time to have those philosophical debates, because if you critique war, I mean, I don't know what the CPIM thinks. I don't know who they are and what they do. But if you really want to win public opinion and win votes, are you going to be talking about peace and critiquing war at this time? It looks kind of stupid to me.
On your earlier point, Nitin, of how India exists in a grey area, I'd say, isn't that the better thing to do? Because I know a lot of people keep talking about an Israel kind of situation, a final solution to Pakistan issue. That would, these are words people throw around.
That comparison is wrong. The entire comparison within Israel and Pakistan and Kashmir is wrong. I don't know why people pick that up. We are not Israel. Kashmiris are not Palestinians.
Do we want to be Israel is also another question, right? This talk of, I'm saying, do we want to be Israel? This talk of final solution, people don't realize the human cost of it all.
It's a figment of the imagination of a few crazy people who have WhatsApp and Twitter. It's not, I don't think there's any serious person who says that we're going to raise Pakistan to the ground. Let's have respect for these guys. These are 250 million people. If not for the fact that India is much larger than them, they would be one of the largest countries in the world. They have significant accomplishments, not least having survived as a nation state for so long in the face of so much of opposition. Their military does a fairly decent job in terms of their professionalism. So I don't think we should go out on the route and say that, this is a bunch of country bumpkins, we can just bomb them to hell or whatever. They're not. They're a serious country. We have 250 million of them. You can't wish them away. You have to find a way to deal with them, right? So all these analogies of I'll be Israel, I'll be United States. United States could do something in Iraq because Iraq had no air defense, right? They could bomb Afghanistan because Afghans had no air defense. But you're going against Pakistan in a place where the air defense of the Pakistani armed forces is the strongest. This is the battle that they've lived for, prepared for, invested in for all their lives, right? So, in military strategy, the standard thing is that you use the element of surprise and go against the adversary's weakest point. In India, in this particular case, there's no element of surprise. We warned them, 2 weeks ago that we are coming. And not only did you warn them, you're going against the adversary's strongest point, right? That's because of the context of what it is, right? So it's a very, very, very different scenario. Comparisons with what the US does or Israel does or Russia does, or it's just not on, right? The India-Pakistan situation is a very, very different and unique case. I think we just have to be sober and look at it very carefully and see what do we want out of this, right? Now, we don't want to be some, Twitter heroes or WhatsApp heroes. We just want to pursue our national interest.
And none of these so-called heroes are going to strap themselves off to a tank and head out to the border. You already have television studios with these animations where women anchors are sitting on top of an F-16 and heading out to Lahore. None of it is going to transform into reality. Nobody wants a war. No sensible population, no sensible country wants a war. You're forced on with a war under circumstances. And if, of course, war will have a cost for a country like India, which is developing at a steady growth rate, which is quite enviable across the world, despite the pandemic, despite everything, we still seem to be on a sweet economic spot, despite our domestic issues and crises of unemployment and of joblessness as well. So there would be a cost for our economy, but it would be even more graver for a country like Pakistan, which is literally surviving on debts at this point in time. So all sides will think about these costs. It's not like it's only India which is doing this thinking. But having said that, I think sometimes, there is a time and moment of doing these debates of whether we need the war or we don't, whether we are completely opposed to the war. As I said, for the longest, we are people who have been tainted as what most of the the rightist elements here would say, aap to wo mombatti jalane wali crowd hai, you're a jhola chhap peace lover. We have always advocated that I would rather have Georgia over war. But I think there comes a point in every country. The foreign minister was in Pakistan. Look, under the multilateral organization, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Islamabad, just a few months back last year in September, to talk about regional issues. The problem is if the same tactic continues every single time, and if there is the complete blurring of lines between terror organizations and the state there. I mean, you look at the funeral prayers images that are coming out from Pakistan for those people who have been killed. One of those images shows Abdul Rauf Asghar, who is the brother, of Hafiz Said, who is actually leading the prayers, and he's flanked by Pakistani army. So the nature of the Pakistani state, where you see this intermingling and the interplay of theology with absolute extremism, violence, radicalism, and the blessings and patronage of those in uniform, that's not going to change. I would add that India in the long term, and of course at all times, India will have to introspect about our intelligence failures that happen. India will have to be accountable. We will have to ask those questions to our governments of the day. India will have to ensure that our internal security mechanisms, keep on improving every day. It's true. You cannot 100% thwart all intelligence, all terror attacks on all days. Out of the 365 days, there will be 1 or 2 days when the terrorists actually get lucky. But it doesn't mean that you do not ask yourselves questions of where you failed, what failed in terms of intelligence failures. There should be heads rolling. There should be accountability that should be fixed. We need to strengthen our own industrial complex when it comes to our defense equipment, which has been moving at a much slower speed than desired, despite all the progress made, particularly when it comes to our borders, of course, on the east with China. So those internal thinkings will also have to be a part of this entire mixed process when it comes to dealing with a neighbor as problematic, that you're also intertwined because of history, geography, and as Pakistan.
I also want to ask about the dragon in the room. While US is not interested anymore because they're not in Afghanistan, China very much is interested, despite their public statements asking both countries to kind of pipe down and calm down and not escalate this further. It is, in a sense, a delightful situation when India is distracted elsewhere and they have their very close ally. And I'm being generous when I call Pakistan an ally of China. Where do you think they'll come in, if not overtly, but through backdoor? How do you think they'll operate?
Hey, look, one important thing here, if you look at the missiles Pakistanis used and the aircraft they used on the 7th of May, they're all Chinese, right? There's just a little bit of doubt on whether some of the kit came from Turkey, but most of the equipment they used, including the HQ-9 missiles and the PF-15s, they're all Chinese products. So by equipping the Pakistanis with these products, with this equipment, with this military equipment, China has done a very simple thing, right? He's been able to neutralize to some extent the edge of the Indian Air Force through proxy, right? Because he and he also now knows, the Chinese also know how these equipment work in combat, right? Like there's a Chinese equipment against, let's say, a Rafale or an Indian jet, or against a Sukhois. They know how it works in combat, so they're getting very important data as well as being able to neutralize the Air Force just by giving and selling arms to the Chinese, right? So that's where it is. So even before, we have to see Pakistan as a China proxy. We have to see Pakistan as a way where China can neutralize or dilute India's military strength through a third party on on an issue that really is of little concern to the Chinese, right? So even if they do anything more, just the fact that they've equipped Pakistan with the kind of military hardware which Pakistan has already changed the balance of power with India.
Nitin, one thing, while you and Smita were talking, by the way, to the audience, Smita had to leave because she is live. She's continuously doing live for international channels. You were saying that this nuclear, the fact that Pakistan has nuclear weapons in its arsenal is something that it has always used to spook the West. Now, if you look at the no first use policy, India has always had it. But in 2019, we saw Rajnath Singh sort of suggest that no first use policy will depend on circumstances, right? We have not heard much after that. But Pakistan does not have that policy. So, though, yes, it may have been something that they've used to spook the West, how real is the threat that they may actually use it? That's the fear, right? I mean,
I think on that count, see, okay, first of all, I don't think we need to be worried about the nuclear escalation, nuclear war yet. Okay, if you have to give it to you in numbers, if this escalation ladder has ladders, maybe it's nuclear is somewhere at 500. And we are probably at number 1 or number 2. Okay, so there are a lot more ladders to go before you go anywhere nuclear. Even if you think that a crazy guy like General Munir is in charge of the thing. See, nuclear weapons primarily assure Pakistan of two things. One is it knows that should it come to an existential risk, right? For example, if the Indian Armed Forces enter Pakistan and try to divide it into two, as we did in 1971, they know that they can dangle the nuclear weapon and prevent that from happening, right? So it's a way to prevent an existential threat to their nation state. It's an existential thing. The second is they can use this to as a shield to insert terrorists into India or to scare the United States and others and get money out of them, right? We use called Al-Qaeda. So this is where it is. Now, regardless of whether they have first use, no first use, whatever, we must remember that these are existential weapons. They're not going to be used so easily. They will talk about it. Even, for example, in the Ukraine war, Putin started by talking about nuclear weapons, right? So it's a way to inject fear, uncertainty, doubt in the minds of people, right? What we have to be worried about is not so much about nuclear weapons, but if this escalation process, this story, instead of ending in a day or two or in a week, goes into 1 week and then hot and cold, injects uncertainty into everybody's business plans and everybody's plans and so on, right? So, are we at peace? Are we at war? Are they going to escalate? Are they not going to escalate? So that kind of uncertainty is what I'm most worried about. I'm not even worried about large-scale conventional war, because a large-scale conventional war needs to have objectives. Right? If Pakistan wants to go to war with us, what is your objective? Why are you going to war with India? What are you going to do? Are you going to be able to take Kashmir out of us? That's not going to happen, right? Are you going to take territory out? It's not going to happen. So why would you go to war? Similarly, the question for India is, why would you go to war with Pakistan at this time? There might be a lot of people saying, we want to take POK, we want to do this, we want to do that. But in practical terms, do you have a political objective which says, I'm going to conquer territory in Pakistan? So even conventional war is highly unlikely, right? So what might happen is an escalation which happens because of accidents, because of miscalculation, misunderstanding, and so on. Which is why I think the NSA to NSA conversations are useful and good. I'm glad the Pakistanis quickly appointed their ISI chief as an NSA so that he could talk to the Indian NSA, right? Once the NSAs to NSAs can talk to each other, there is some amount of conversation which says, look, let's not miscalculate, misunderstand. The other level of conversation happens at the level of the DGMOs, the Directors General of Military Operations, which can also exert some kind of influence on this cross-border firing, artillery, Poonch and all of that, right? So I don't think we should even remotely worry about nuclear weapons. As ordinary citizens, this is not something we need to worry about. Let's get on with our lives. As I put out that sticker that day, Swalpa adjust Madi and carry on, keep calm and carry on. Things will be fine.
So as ordinary citizens, one thing I'm worried about, not just a citizen, I just want to veer this topic away for conclusion about us as journalists, right? One thing which worries me is that how do you report when a situation escalates? How do you report war? For example, now everybody is just going by what the government is saying, which is Indian journalists are going by what India is saying, Pakistan journalists are going by what Pakistan is saying. I was, for example, reading the Dawn. By the way, India claims it has banned the Dawn, but the Dawn and all Pakistani newspapers are accessible if you go through the laptop, but you can't access it through the mobile. I don't know how India bans things, but the ban is really inefficient. So if you read their newspapers, they are, I think, much more, they are like our news channels, very aggressive. But the editorial says that everybody has to temper down. And I was wondering that at what point will we perhaps even question like narratives, right? For example, in the all-party meeting, if we could go back to that, one of the questions which Mallikarjun Kharge himself apparently asked Rajnath Singh is that, were 5 of our jets shot down? Because a French officer has told CNN that a Rafale jet has been shot down. Why is India not talking about that? Now, as journalists, I feel that the first 1 or 2 days, everybody is a little reticent also because there is a particular mood. People are reacting in certain ways, but those questions have to come at some point. Like, what do you think about what's happening, Leena, Pooja? And then we'll bring in Nitin about how he thinks that Indian journalists will first react and how he thinks they should.
No, for me, look, we're looking at how India is reacting vis-a-vis Pakistan, which is important. And to my mind, war is not just tanks and all of that. There are multiple ways you could strike at Pakistan. And I hope India is doing all those things. We don't have to necessarily know about those things because many of that, it's required to be kept confidential. So that's one thing. What I do want to know, if not now, but over the next 1 week perhaps, or a few more days after that, is internally what we're doing to strengthen our position. Because we cannot for 1 minute forget that it was an intelligence failure. What happened in Pahalgam was a result of intelligence failure. We cannot allow these slip-ups. I know that it cannot be 100% foolproof, but we need to make sure our internal security is much more stronger. So for me, these are questions that we cannot stop asking just because, India did strike at those 9 very crucial positions, and whatever perceived or real victories are, I want to know what we're doing internally. And I hope journalists who have access, you and I, Dhanya, or Leena, don't get to ask these questions of PM Modi if he holds a press conference, or Home Minister Amit Shah, whoever else. But those who do have access, I hope they're asking these questions.
And if I may come in, I see a lot of overpouring support from all sides of the political spectrum for the war. And war has become our reality sort of in the last few years. There is a continuing war between Russia and Ukraine. There is Israel at war, bombing every day, civilians and all of those. And now, however minuscule the war between India and Pakistan is at the moment, there is a very complicated geopolitics at play. We know how weak a nation Pakistan is, and how it can easily become a soft ploy for China to, be its proxy and can use its weapons and take this war to a place where that maybe we are not foreseeing at the moment. And also, war is a sort of a national heroic movement where, with a name like Operation Sindoor given to it, there is a lot of emotive element here, and sort of people who have even been trying to question of at what cost and to what ends are being attacked on social media very viciously. And even a widow who's speaking up has, that's all kind of vicious attacks here. And this is a very difficult moment for a nation. So it's easy to start a war, but how do you bring down a war? Even if it doesn't go into the full-blown nature, the way Nitin has put it, that it can continue on in an off and on thing, and it can disrupt our economy, can disrupt the way India functions, it can disrupt the way we carry on with life inside this country. When deep into a country, there are defense systems, though they can prevent these attacks. There are daily attacks happening from the end of Pakistan. So all in all, this is a very difficult situation, and I think as journalists, we are duty bound to keep on asking those questions, though there are very few avenues now left for us to ask these kind of questions. But I think we need to keep holding the powers accountable, because under the guise of war, we have always seen that a lot of decisions are taken which were not well thought through, or should not have been taken, which the post-mortem analysis sometimes teaches us. And I think we all need to hold light to where it should be shined.
No, so Nitin, just to add to what Leena said before I come to it, like yesterday when Vikram Misri, the foreign secretary, was holding that press meet, which I think was very sober. They gave whatever details were needed. He said that the attack by the terrorists had a clear motive to create communal tension in India. And thanks to the people of India and the government, it did not happen. But really, what he cannot obviously say is no thanks to the supporters of the BJP and right wing and even BJP leaders who are day in and day out communalizing this entire thing immediately after Pahalgam started, right? Now, that's the question which a lot of mainstream media is not putting forward. That if the Indian government is giving itself credit for not having communal rights in the country, that is no thanks to your own party, because you did try your best to at least make communal tensions flare. And the second is, I see a lot of this tendency already to shut down any voices with sort of question, right? Like, for example, the editor of Frontline, Vaishna, asked why this name called Operation Sindoor. Is that not patriarchal? And this whole symbol of bringing 2 women officers, she was critical of that. She said, why do that? But immediately, there is like a tendency to shut down. So what I fear is that in the long run also, we will do, what we saw in Iraq, like embedded journalism, where we just take the handouts and we report it. Do you fear that is going to happen here, or that our media will behave a bit differently?
See, I don't watch TV, and I'm not on WhatsApp and others, so I can't really comment on this. But when you ask me that question, I'm quite stumped by it, because I think journalism during any war anywhere is challenging, but journalism in circumstances like the ones which you described just now are even more challenging, right? It's like and don't forget, there is also a connection between information and actually the military situation on the ground, right? For example, I saw some people taking pictures of, these are Pakistani pictures, where they actually took videos of airfield in Lahore where there was smoke coming out, right? Now, in a classic sense, these kind of images would have been banned and blocked, because now you're letting the enemy know, that the enemy in this case is us, you're letting the enemy, us, know that the strike on Lahore airport has been successful, right? Which gives you some confidence that what you did actually worked. But imagine that picture had not come out. Then they would still be guessing whether that air defense installation in Lahore, is it really on or not, right? So information does play a role in the way military operations play out, right? So in the classic, in the old days, you would just ban everything. No war reporting would be banned and so on. But today, you have those videos coming out. Now, whether you ban Dawn or not, this guy on Twitter or on Instagram is putting this video out, and I get to see it, right? And whether you deny about something about the aircraft or not, I still get to see it. So I don't quite know how to, play, I don't envy the journalists in this place. I really don't know. I mean, I'm still trying to think of a response to your question. I'm not getting it, because typically you would say, look, your commitment is towards truth and facts, and you have to, report truth and facts as you see them. But in a war kind of a situation, reporting truth and facts can at times help the enemy, right? And that's not necessarily what you want to do, right? You want to sort of use judgment. But how do you use judgment at a point where you are being pressured by government, pressured by interest groups, pressured by political groups, pressured by thugs not to do what you're supposed to do, right? I really don't have an answer. I mean, all more power to you. You people, your journalists, do your job well. I suppose you know the answer. You ask me, I'll get a 0 on 10 on this question.
Yeah, so I guess that's a dilemma that we'll have to figure out. We, in fact, have one or two colleagues who have left to Kashmir. So as soon as they reach and our first reports come out, let's see what they do. Because I feel that, for example, when 26 tourists were killed in Pahalgam, there was such a lot of outrage, right? Which is warranted. Like, literally, we knew the name of every person who died, which state they came from, who are their parents, who's their wife. We had relentless coverage. But yesterday, 16 people died, and I don't think we know a single name. We don't know their relatives. I mean, there are very few reporters who have reached there, and they are trying, but that collective outrage is not there. And a lot of Kashmiris are asking, why? Is it because it is Kashmiris who have been killed? So I think these are all questions which we'll have to sort of deal with. But like you said, facts and truth should come. Also, why everybody should watch Let Me Explain episode this week, because we'll have Pooja with the fact checker. I will not give all the details, Pooja, explaining how do you behave in a situation like this as citizens? What is the basic precautions you can take? Thank you, Nitin, for sparing your valuable time for us.
Thank you. And may peace prevail.
Yeah, swalpa adjust ಮಾಡಿ.
Thank you.
So that's all from us at South Central, a shorter episode where we had only one point of discussion. And I just want to sort of take this anticipatory bail that by the time this episode is aired, there would be a lot of developments, which is why we try to stick to not the news part of it, but the larger implications, the larger policy decisions, etc. So hopefully this chat does work for you, does give you more information, educate you, empower you, etc. Do stay tuned for the next episode of South Central. Yeah, Pooja?
Before I go, I just want to say, I'm sure all of you have been tuning into news channels to see what's happening. Good luck with that. If you can figure out at least 5 words of what's happening, great for you. But do support independent journalism and, websites like ourselves, Scroll, News Laundry. Like Dhanya said, we do have a reporter going. So if you want sane journalism, responsible journalism, then do support us and become a subscriber.
Thank you, Pooja, Leena, thank you, Bhuvan, Maria, Jasim, Ajay, and everybody else on the South Central team.